What's up, everybody? This is Skylar with Savage Truth 603, and I have a very special guest today. His name is Ian Freeman, and he's been a libertarian activist in the community for a very long time. This man's an inspiration to me, along with several other people, and I'm very excited to have him on the show. He's the host of Free Talk Live out of Keene, New Hampshire. It's a syndicated radio show, I believe, right?
Yeah, actually, we just got on 3 stations across Laconia. We're on WEMJ there. We're on in Dover on WTSN, and then also WTPL up in Hillsborough and Concord. And there's other stations. WNTK takes us on Saturday nights, but those first 3 I mentioned are doing all 7 nights a week,
Awesome.
Which is amazing. That's awesome.
Well, first of all, thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for having me on the show. I guess the place to start is to tell people like kind of where you began with your activism. Like, what got you into being an activist for freedom or liberty?
That's a good question. I was a teenager when I learned that the war on drugs was total BS. And I learned that the first time I smoked marijuana and found out that it wasn't actually this horribly terrible monstrosity that, DARE class was trying to inform us, lie to us about. And, it sort of led me to ask the question of what other things was the government lying to me about. It turns out it's pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So, I became a libertarian. There was the Harry Brown campaign. He was the libertarian candidate for president in the year 1996 and 2000. And I kind of came in on his 2000 campaign. He wrote some really great books. One of them is called Why Government Doesn't Work. And it was a real eye-opener. Really easy to read, well written, and he just nails it. So that brought me into the libertarian movement, and then eventually I learned about this migration of freedom-loving people that were moving to New Hampshire. As it turns out, my dad was born in New Hampshire. He thought he was born in Maine, but it was like a military, he was the son of a military guy, so they didn't really even know where he was born. But, so I do have some roots from this area, but I love it here. I moved here in 2006. And there have been, as you may know, thousands of liberty-loving people who have done the same thing over the last 15 years. So I'm part of all that, and I want to bring more people that actually care about freedom to New Hampshire. I think now it's more important to have that happening than ever.
I agree. I love what the Free State Project does. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about with the liberty-loving people is... Maybe not.
They're part of it. They definitely are. I would say responsible for a huge portion of people coming here.
Yep.
There are also a lot of people who have never joined the Free State Project who just love liberty, and they're not joiner types. They just want to come and be with other people who have a similar mindset. So there's no way to count the number of people who've come here. And even before the Free State Project, New Hampshire with its live free or die mentality has always attracted a certain type of person, that can appreciate that. Obviously, there's a bunch of massholes that move up too, but there have been freedom lovers who've been coming here for a long time. I think
I would agree with that. So you got your start early. This was in your teens.
Yeah, I was a teenager.
Okay, yeah. And I saw. Let me grab this real quick. I saw Derek J's documentary, Victimless Crime Spree. He did 540 days in jail for dancing, smoking, going to court, and riding a bike. And right away I noticed you in the background. So you and I had already been talking and had been in the process of having me come on your show. And you suggested I watch the film. And it was really interesting, and it was very inspiring. And how did you and Derek J hook up, and like what got you into this liberty stuff right here in New Hampshire?
Derek J moved here. He moved here probably in 2011 it must have been 2011. I was actually going to jail for doing some civil disobedience here in Keene, New Hampshire, which included things like drinking from bottles that were not really clear what was in the bottles. Like they looked like beer bottles in the city council chambers in Keene. So it was a protest against open container laws. The things that prohibit people from, like, just say walking down the street or sitting in a park with a beer or whatever, which are of course ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so, I was in jail for that civil disobedience, and Derek J moved up at that time. He was inspired by some of the civil disobedience that was going on here in New Hampshire. And he was just sort of like this super flaming gay city boy from Philly. And he just proceeded to get arrested 5 times in like less than a year, all for completely victimless, non-crimes, like sitting in the park with a pipe full of marijuana and, just enjoying a day. It was amazing. We got all 5 of the arrests on video. So it's a really like outrageous movie that, as you said, was moving, and it was inspiring and sad. I mean, it really just has like a whole range of emotions, and it was such an interesting story. We just decided, this would make a really interesting documentary film, and so we made that.
It's funny that you say that too, because it was really fun watching him kind of toy with the establishment and push the boundaries. And again, it's inspiring to me because since the day I was born, a little bit of backstory for me, and like most of my friends know this, I might have even said it on one of my videos. My family's been in this country since 1699. That's almost 100 years before the signing of the Constitution. So, like, I feel like I have the blood of the founding fathers running through my veins, like that real defiant attitude of I am not going to be controlled by anybody. So to see him do his thing was just like literally like almost brought me to tears to watch. It was so cool. You guys were just killing it. And like then at the end of the film, when he actually had to go away, and it was like so humbling, like he made a huge statement, but at the end of the day he had to pay a price for that, and he paid the price, and he that's a very respectable thing to do. But man, it was definitely a little bit of like an emotional like roller coaster at the end there. Like it's really you have to wonder, is it worth it? But it is.
Well, it has to be. I mean, otherwise you're just going to be a slave. Right. And so if you don't stand up, and there's so many of our neighbors that aren't. They're afraid, they put on a mask. They don't want to, but they are, because they're afraid of what their other neighbors will think, or are they going to get fired at work, or who knows what it is that's, going through their mind at the time. But it's definitely fear-based, whatever it is. I mean, to me, the people that are out there that love freedom and are putting on masks, because why? It's still not clear. That level of obedience is really disturbing to me. And I think that disobedience, which is what Derek J did in his movie, and also non-cooperation is sort of like another side of that, where, disobedience is where you go out for the purpose of doing something that is against the system.
Sure.
And it's hopefully peaceful. And that's sort of, you like make an announcement, and you're going to go do this, and it's like this big thing. Whereas non-cooperation is like where you just were living your life, and the state comes after you in some sort of form, whatever that is. They're threatening you over who knows what, right? And you just say, well, no, I'm not going to do what you're telling me to do. You don't rule me. Who are you people? You're strangers. I don't listen to what strangers have to tell me. My mom
right.
taught me not
That's
to.
right.
You guys are strangers to me. And so not cooperating with these criminals in the government is also another aspect of what people can do. You don't have to go out there and put yourself out on Front Street and be like Derek J. You can just say no. And if enough people say no, then there's nothing that they can do to us, because everybody's afraid of going to jail. And honestly, there are a lot worse jails in a lot of other places. At least, I mean, I can't speak for any jail besides Cheshire County, but we joked, we called it the Keene Spiritual Retreat, because as far as jails go, it's not like the worst in the world.
Yeah.
But no one wants to go into a place like that. No one wants to have their freedom taken from them in that way. But the reality of it is, our freedoms are being taken in a much more subtle manner, and over time. And the reason those freedoms are being taken over time is because of obedience. It's because people are doing what they're told, and they think that doing what they're told is the right thing to do. And there's no time in history where that's ever been the case.
And it's funny because, you and I have talked a little bit about what went on with me at the governor's house and me getting arrested, and a lot of people know that story, and some, the boomers basically, they're like, oh, like why do you have to have what like why did you have to get arrested? Like why can't you just go along with this, and why do you have to have an AR-15? Like why do you have to do it this way? And it's like
Are they from Massachusetts? I mean,
they're just so brainwashed, especially boomers.
yeah.
Boomers are just they're brainwashed into the whole system of the government knows what's best for us and
Yeah,
they're
what
looking
happened
out
to
for
them?
us.
Didn't a bunch of them used to be hippies and like counterculture and against the system? What happened to those
I
guys?
have no idea what happened to them. I feel like they got literally, 5 decades of brainwashing, 6 decades of brainwashing, and like
Yeah.
it's taken its toll on them.
Hmm.
And these are the people that are still being supported by the fallacy of Social Security. Like I'm not going to benefit from Social Security. I'm paying into it, but I'm not going to benefit from that. So
Yeah.
I think that those people are still kind of hanging on to the hope that like government is going to help us, and they're going to do what's right, and this is
When
what's.
has that ever happened?
I know.
I mean,
I agree.
when in the history of government has it ever done the right thing? I mean, every now and then they'll cut a check to somebody that's actually in need for welfare, but there's so much waste and there's so much malfeasance and just corruption.
Yeah.
The whole idea that you need to have a central authority around to help people, because that's the excuse for a lot of people and why they support government, right? It's like, oh, well, they want to help the poor or they want to help the sick, and those are worthy things to want to do.
Sure.
But we can do it without having a bunch of bureaucrats sitting around taking a huge chunk off the top of the money that's collected for themselves, and then being very crappy at like actually giving it out to people who actually are in need. Organizations that do things voluntarily, like the Salvation Army or a local food bank, homeless shelters that are run privately. We've got one of those here in Keene. These are organizations that actually do what people want, and if they don't do what people want, then they don't get funded. And the thing with the government is, if they're not doing what you want them to do, well, too bad, because they're going to take your house if you decide you don't want to cut the property tax check to them.
Yep.
So they don't have the incentive of actually having to do anything right. I mean, I'm not saying the bureaucrats, some of them don't try their best, but their whole system is not incentivized correctly, because they know they can keep getting paid no matter how badly they perform. And that's true of the police, and it's true of all of these government people.
And that's a lot of the problem is that the people who actually have the people in mind, people like you and me, they don't stand a chance of getting into these governments because they don't want to be part of the establishment. They don't want to be part of the system, so they can't gain any traction. They don't get support from other people within those establishments because those, top to bottom, they're all making money. They're all making money off of making everybody else poor.
Well, plus productive people don't want to work for the government because,
right.
But productive people who are actually creating for society and, making useful products and services for their neighbors, they don't want to get away from the thing they love to go do something that honestly is just awful, right? I mean, anyone who's ever sat and watched the legislature in session knows how despicable and disgusting the whole process is. And if you've spent any further time even trying to get involved in it, you start to uncover the corruption, and you start to just see how ugly the ugly underbelly of the political system is, and it's a detestable thing. So I don't blame anybody who doesn't want to get involved in it, and I think most people are ostensibly not wanting to be involved in it. It sucks.
It really does suck. And I felt personally, and I didn't get into politics when I was young. I probably started paying attention to politics, I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago or so, really started getting into it. But like, what made me start to pay attention was seeing Maggie Hassan and Annie Custer like step through New Hampshire and get into the Senate without any sort of like resistance at all. And New Hampshire for a long time was a live free or die state. I don't necessarily think that's the case anymore, considering I got arrested on public property for trying to have a candlelight vigil.
Yeah.
But I that was what made me think that something I'm no podiatrist, but something is afoot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious once you start paying attention, to what's going on. I think, the average person doesn't want to pay attention because life is busy. If you've got a family, you've got mouths to feed. If you got bills to pay, no matter who you are,
Yep.
You've got responsibilities at work, and it's easy to just want to just turn off everything else. But the fact is, because people don't pay attention, and because they don't, or because they do what they're told, and they are very obedient, we've gotten into this situation now where you've been arrested for having a candlelight vigil. Right. I mean, that's how, and it's been that ridiculous, right? Like you see in Victimless Crime Spree. Mm-hmm. I mean, every one of those arrests is absolutely ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
Everything that happens to Derek J in that movie is absolutely outrageous. And what happens to him isn't like unusual. It's just what's unusual is we got it on video.
Right.
To some of the politicians' credit, they did get decriminalization of cannabis passed in 2017. Mm-hmm. So things aren't as bad in some areas as they've been in the past. But that's just a minor change. The real problem is, and we've seen this now with the whole COVID crackdown, is where business owners are afraid to act like free people.
Right.
And they're afraid their license is going to get pulled.
And it will.
Yeah. And absolutely. And the problem really started whenever the first license came out, and whenever the first person in New Hampshire went to the government and said, "I need to get your permission to do my business,
to sell alcohol
or whatever, not just alcohol, any licensing." Now,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, New Hampshire doesn't have as many occupational licenses as some other states, so it's more free than some of the other places out there. But there are still plenty of places that are licensed in New Hampshire, and that gives the government control over what you do. And the reason that they have that control is because so many people voluntarily on their own, or at least it wasn't voluntary, because there's a government gang behind it that's going to, to hurt you or destroy your business if you don't do it. But out of fear or voluntarily or whatever, people went and they got this permission slip. Yep. And now the state can dangle that over their head and say, well, if you don't do what we say, then we're going to take your permission slip away. And then if you don't, as we've seen with the gym owners down in New Jersey, I imagine you followed their case.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, they went in and raided, the New Jersey state government raided their bank account and took $170,000 out of it.
I didn't know about that.
That's the most recent. That was like maybe last week.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, they just took every single penny in their bank account, and this is after they've tried to change their locks on their front door, boarded the place up with plywood. I mean, this is a criminal enterprise from top to bottom. And while the criminal enterprise in New Jersey is worse than the one in New Hampshire, we're only comparing cancers here. So yeah, Kim Jong-un in North Korea is probably worse than Donald Trump or Joe Biden's situation, where they've got barbed wire up around their country, and you can still cross the Mexican border without having to go through barbed wire. But ultimately, the difference is only in degrees. Right. I mean, America is the most imprisoning of all of the nations on the planet.
Right.
I mean, that's the reality of it, and New Hampshire, is part of that.
So, and the corruption, my biggest issue is the corruption is so deep. It's so widespread, even here in New Hampshire. I mean, Chris Sununu is making him and his family, John, his dad John and Michael, they are, I don't know if Michael's in it, but Dean Kamen, they have a business with Dean Kamen, and they are making millions off of PPE through deals with foreign countries, including China. Like, how is this man able to impose these rules on businesses with these mask mandates and all this madness when he is directly profiting from that? How is that legal? How are people not like asking more? But it's this slippery slope, and that's what I tell people. They're like, why do you keep doing this stuff? Why are you like, I'm in the paper all the time lately, and like some people don't get it, and I keep saying to them, we are on a slide right now, and we're picking up momentum to lose everything that we have. I got arrested for trying to have a peaceful candlelight vigil because the governor didn't like the placement of our vigil. The same man
who's on public property, by the way. Your vigil
on
was
public property. I never stepped foot off of public property. And this is the same man who's conducting official business from his residence, but then has his brother sign an ordinance to make it illegal to voice our opinions in his neighborhood. And people, there's a lot of people out there. I got a lot of support for what I did. Excuse me.
Sure.
But also, I was shocked at how many people were like, you shouldn't be near his house. Like, that's not okay. You're scaring his family. And it's like, nobody's trying to scare anybody.
No.
We want to be heard. And we can't be heard with the way that things are going right now.
I think it's important to remember that Chris Sununu is scaring people's families by threatening to put people out of businesses and out of jobs and out of their homes. Because if you can't work, you can't pay your mortgage, you can't pay the rent, and eventually you're going to be out on the street. And that's what Chris Sununu and the rest of these people in New Hampshire that are in the government are creating for people. So it's completely within your rights to go outside of his home. Whether or not he's working from his home or not, it's absolutely within your rights to go to a politician, because the reality is they don't just work 9 to 5.
Right.
He's the governor all the time.
All the time.
And his policies are hurting people all the time across every economic strata, across, the entire state of New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. And the reality is it's completely legitimate what you've done. But some people, they understandably are empathizing with Chris Sununu. They're putting themselves in his position. They're saying, well, how would I feel if there were a bunch of, noisy protesters outside of my house? I mean, nobody wants that to happen.
Right.
And so that's what they're sort of empathizing. Here's a question for you. When you were watching Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree, there's a scene where a crossing guard attacks Derek J with a stop sign.
Yes.
When you were watching that scene, what did you think?
You just got assaulted, bro. That's what I thought. You just got assaulted by this lady with the stop sign. Like, why does she have the right to come up and whack you with a stop sign because you have a video camera and because you don't necessarily agree with her opinion?
She doesn't, and you're absolutely right. But there's a large amount of people that when they see that scene in that movie, they get very mad at Derek J and me. I was recording the video in that particular case. They get very upset at us because what they see is their grandmother being bothered on the streets by two young men or whatever. And the reality is that lady has a badge. Mm-hmm. She works for the police. And yes, she does look like a grandmother, but there's nothing that's inherently wrong with recording video of so-called public servants doing their job.
Right.
And there's a lot of people out there that I don't know if it's like a religious belief that the camera steals their soul, but I don't know where it comes from, but there are a lot of people who get very, very upset about someone recording video, even if it's in public. So there's like a bunch of factors that sort of factor into play here where people are empathizing. They're saying, oh, that could be my grandmother. There's all kinds of reasons why people don't like activism and standing up for yourself and doing things like recording video in a public place, especially of a government. Look, if you're walking through the store, I don't care who you are. I don't want to record video of you.
Right.
But if you're a police officer, mm-hmm. and you're doing whatever it is you're doing, because the state is this sort of public thing that we're all forced to fund, well, then I've got a right to see what they're doing. Yep. And in the New Hampshire Constitution, I believe it's Article 8 that requires the government be open and accountable. And I think what we're seeing right now is that is less the case than it's ever been. You can't go into the state house.
Nope.
It's closed.
Right.
You can't go to a lot of city council meetings across New Hampshire.
They're
closed
yep.
to the public. Yeah, okay, you can watch it on Zoom, but that's not the...
You can't get in. You
Oh,
can't
really?
comment. Oh, well, a lot of them they block you right out, so
I believe it.
you can't even watch it on Zoom, or
Yeah.
they'll mute you if they don't like what you have to say. So it's not an open forum like it would be if we were all standing face to face and somebody couldn't hit a button and shut you off.
Right. And even that is still a highly controlled situation, but now they have even more control than they've ever done. Courtrooms are closed. You can't even go to a public trial. So the government now is even less accessible. It's even less open than it's ever been. And now it's even more important to do things like protest outside of their houses, and to do things like record video of the things that they're doing in person. And it's outrageous what's happening.
And like the crazy part, I feel like we're very much at a tipping point, because the one thing that I will say is, you can tell the people who get off on shoving these kind of laws down people's throats.
Sure.
There's also a significant number of people who I see enforcing these laws who do not like it. And I think that it's only a matter of time before those people who are already questioning, because if you think about it, like, some people signed up to be law enforcement to push people around, to be bullies, take advantage of people, exert their power. There are also some that really signed up because they just wanted to enforce the Constitution and protect people and solve rapes and murders. You know what I mean?
Yep, I believe that.
So those people who are genuine to those beliefs, and who actually honor their oath of the Constitution, when they're called to these situations where they have to say, wait a second, I am being forced to choose between what my boss tells me to do and what I agreed to do when I took this job.
And took the oath.
And took the oath. And I think that the more times that people get in these cops' faces in a nonviolent way, which is what I did, one of the videos I posted, when I got discharged, you can see the end of the video that I got discharged, and one of the state troopers comes out and was like, I'm not going to say we agree with what you're doing, and he's shaking his head like this, and like, thanks for being, and like another one came up and thanked me for being cool. They gave me my guns back at the end of the thing. They gave me a half a blunt back at the end of the thing. Like, times are changing.
Yeah,
it's an interesting situation, and I feel like,
I'll say this to your point on that. I had a Keene police officer actually come up during the summertime. We've got a porch here in Keene, and usually my friend Nobody, who ran for governor against Chris
Nobody, man.
In 2020, he lives right next door. We're in the same duplex together, and so we're usually out just kind of getting some work done on laptops or whatever, just hanging out on the porch. And so people come by sometimes and they say nice things. Sometimes they don't say nice things, but most of the time they say nice things.
Yeah.
And so Keene cop, rolls up, and generally, you don't want to speak to the police because they're almost always conducting an investigation, and usually if you say things, it's not going to help you. But in this case, he had come up to share that he was getting pretty fed up with what was going on, what with the whole mask mandates and things like that were going into place. And he, as a law enforcement officer, did not want to have to enforce things like that. And he'd reached his limit of being able to tolerate what the government was demanding of him. And I said something like, hey, we all have our line that, gets crossed at some point. And I said, welcome to the club,
Yep.
And I won't, I'm not going to say who he was, but he's one of the Keene police. So it was interesting.
And so when they were walking me backwards, as I'm getting arrested, it's weird because when they first surrounded me and they grabbed a hold of me, one of them looked me right in the eyes and he goes, "Don't resist." And it wasn't like, "Don't you resist." It was like, "Please don't resist." Just go along with it, kind of thing. When he looked me in the eyes, I could tell these guys don't I just, you know what I mean? And so they're walking me backwards, and I'm talking to them, and I'm like, you guys are blue collar guys. You're not millionaires. You're not married to bankers. You're not married to brain surgeons. You guys are married to hairdressers and nurses and massage therapists and waitresses and, you know, bakery owners. These are the people that are suffering. It's not the people making money. How many, like, I'm like, how many paychecks do you think this guy up on the hill right here has missed while everybody else is going bankrupt and losing their businesses? I'm like, I'm out here fighting for your wives and your cousins and your brothers, and like, they were dead silent, dude. They get it. I think a lot of them get it, you know, and it's a weird situation, and we're at a weird time. I don't know where things go from here. Like,
I don't know. I know the coalition, or the Committee of Safety, cosnh.com, Dan Richard there has been doing some interesting things where they actually declared independence on the State House steps, I don't know, most of a month ago at this point.
Yeah, and they they fired Governor Sununu.
They actually fired everyone.
Yeah, okay.
I think what Dan would say, and he's a much better speaker on this point than I am, is that
I had him on the show once already.
Yeah, he's a really interesting guy, and he would point out that essentially the whole election was fraudulent due to various different factors, and so therefore on January 6th or whenever it was, that 7th or whenever it was that Sununu was sworn in his ceremony, his secret inauguration ceremony that they moved indoors because they were afraid of something.
Because of someone. A few someones, but one in particular.
There was a group of people that were expected to actually block him physically from being coronated, and like with guns.
I heard it was 1,000 people, dude.
Well, who knows what the actual number would have been, but that's why he was afraid and went in and hid. But Dan would say that whole inauguration and the all the state reps that were sworn in, that it's all completely unconstitutional, that basically this whole government is bankrupt and morally and by
constitutionally bankrupt.
Yeah, various different aspects. I mean, financially certainly as well.
Yep.
And so that they declared independence with a new Declaration of Independence there on the State House steps, and then went and served that notice on the Attorney General and on Sununu. They actually went like 2 days later or a few days later to Sununu's house and served the papers to one of his agents in the driveway. So I got to say, I like where Dan is going with this whole thing. Let's use Article 10 if you believe in the whole government, the whole New Hampshire government situation, which I'd rather have no government, but if I'm going to have a government, I'd rather have one that's closer to home rather than one that's in DC.
Yep.
So I think it's moving in the right direction. That's what Dan is doing there with cosnh.com, and so that's why I'm supporting what they're up to. So
I think that like a lot of talk has been had about secession at this point, or some sort of break from the federal union. Some people throw around the word divorce, some people talk about secession. I'm not really sure the legalities between what I think a divorce would come down to a civil war, but I think a secession would be a little bit different of a situation. The question is, with so much federal debt and that's a very complicated situation. Like, where do we even start with something like that?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, the federal debt isn't our debt; it's their debt. They didn't. You didn't agree to that. So the whole idea that everybody owes a portion of that is ridiculous. They went into that debt knowing there was no chance it would ever get paid off, and there is no chance it will ever be paid off. The whole thing is a scam from top to bottom. The federal money system is a scam. The dollar has lost more than probably 99% of its value in the last 100 years. I mean, the inflation just continues to go. They printed up a record amount of money in the last year, in 2020. From what the reports were that I saw, it was as much as, or as little as like I think it was like
37% of every single dollar ever printed was printed in 2020.
I've heard the numbers between 20 and 30 something percent, but it's a huge amount. Whatever it is, they printed up a lot of money and inflated the money supply, and so there's just so much damage that's being done there. To get out of that situation just requires people believing that it's possible. Whatever it is that people believe is what can become real. I mean, that may be a little metaphysical, but it's true to some extent. If people believe that secession can happen, then it can happen.
Oh, I
If
agree.
people don't believe that it can, and there's some people that just believe, oh, they're going to drop nukes on us, or they're going to roll in tanks or whatever. And I don't think that's the case. I think that if you have a peaceful secession movement, now, where the Southerners went wrong was the attack on Fort Sumter, which some say was even a false flag, but who knows what the truth is. We didn't have cameras then. We do now. Right. And so if the government, the federal government, wants to roll in tanks, then it's going to be a really ugly situation that everyone in the world is going to know about the moment that happens. I don't think they want that kind of publicity. I don't think, as bad and as evil as the state is in the United States, they still try to look legitimate. Right. And it's legitimate to leave a relationship when the other person in the relationship is abusive. It's completely legitimate to say goodbye. Right. and walk away from that. And the reality is, New Hampshire does have Article 10 in its constitution, which is a right to revolution. Yes, and so that's what Dan and the folks over at cosnh.com are doing, is they're invoking that right to revolution in a way that has not been done so far. I mean, I've done it before. Like, I've been in court and I've said to a judge that, well, I'm invoking my right to revolution. The judge is like, we don't care. You're going to jail. I don't mean to laugh, but it doesn't work if you're just one guy. Right. You have to be a movement, and that's, I think, what we're seeing grow. So just a long answer to your question of how do we do this? I think Dan's on the right track, and more people just sort of withdrawing themselves mentally from being associated with these criminals. I mean, look, the government isn't good. They're not doing good things. They're destroying the economy. They're destroying people's lives. And that's something they've been doing. Right. They're just ramping it up now, and they're doing it in a way that's completely secret, or near to completely secret in a lot of cases. And there's some real serious reasons why people are legitimately concerned about this. So it's time for people to start paying attention.
And stepping up. Not just paying attention, but people have to get involved. It's, it's one thing to share memes or articles on Facebook, but it's another thing to actually go to a protest and make your voice heard. It's really funny because they've been holding regular protests at the same spot that I got arrested, and the state police watch everybody walk up and down the same sidewalk that I got arrested on when the governor claimed I was in his backyard. And so, down the road, I feel like that'll work out for me. Okay, I feel there might be some civil things, for me, which is nice, because if that's the situation, then I'm going to buy the biggest piece of land I can possibly afford in New Hampshire, and I'm going to turn it into a libertarian community, and that's where we'll start our secession.
Right on. Well, I seceded a long time ago. I seceded in 2010 when I signed the Shire Society Declaration at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which is it's every year. It happens in the White Mountains up at a campground called Rogers Campground. It's the largest campground in all of New Hampshire, and it's beautiful. Okay. But we've been going there for years. The libertarians, the voluntarists, the liberty-loving folks have been gathering there for like a week. And now there's a second festival called Fork Fest, which happens the week after the Porcupine Freedom Festival. But back in 2010, there was this thing called the Shire Society Declaration, which is it's like a personal declaration of independence. So like a decade before cosnh.com had their declaration of independence sort of for the state, we had a declaration of independence for the individual. For the individual to say, well, I am not part of your government society. Your society is coercive. Yeah. I don't want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of a peaceful society of people that, actually respect others and, allow others to make choices for their lives.
Including what they pay for taxes.
So we joined a voluntary society called the Shire Society. And there's a document, and it's, was printed up on hemp paper, and it's very beautiful, and it's got dozens of signatures on it. So I'd invite people out there to check out shiresociety.com. I actually went to the Cheshire County Fair for several years in a row before they banned libertarians from the fair from being vendors. That's a whole interesting story.
What?
But I used to do outreach booths there where I would talk to people about things like, freedom or Bitcoin, things like that. And one of those, a couple of years I did the Shire Society Declaration where I handed out physical copies of the Declaration on a clipboard, and invited people to read it. It's not a very long thing, just read it. It's like one sheet of paper, right? So people can read it pretty quickly. And then hundreds of people signed that. I think it was at least a couple hundred people, came by, like probably New Hampshire natives, people that love the ideas of freedom and live free or die. And when they saw this, they were like, wow, yeah, this is right on. Oh, yeah. And they signed it. And another thing I did at that fair one year was to hand out secession flyers, or the idea of New Hampshire declaring independence, which you touched on earlier. And I was really pleased with the positive responses I got from people about that, because you never know what people's response is going to be before you get out there and put ideas into their heads and their hands. And I saw a lot of people, like when they looked at the flyer from the Foundation for New Hampshire for New Hampshire Independence, their website nhindependence.org. Anyway, when people would look at the flyer, you'd see their eyes light up and like a big smile would go across their face, because they were thinking about, maybe for the first time, the idea of New Hampshire leaving the United States and what that could mean, and what it means for you to be able to be more free, where you don't have these federal goons telling you how to live your life or how to run your business, and you don't have to pay them every single year 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% or whatever the hell, federal income taxes cost people. Imagine the wealth that New Hampshire would be able to keep here and be able to focus here on our families and our charities and, our communities, if we didn't have this huge federal behemoth siphoning off, 50% of what we earn.
I could not agree more, and I've been talking about that for a long time. Like, we have become slaves to a system that we are never, ever, ever going to have any benefit from. They're just milking us dry, and it's only going to get worse from my generation to my kids' generation, and that's why I feel the need to stand up, and that's why I feel the need to do what I do, is because I don't want to leave this to my kids. What's headed for, where we're at. And like you touched on a while ago about the money and stuff like that, like we are headed for a major economic collapse, like a major economic collapse. And I've been talking about this for a while, and like, I'll throw it out there. And like, do you collect gold or silver? Are you like one of those?
Oh, yeah. So, freedom lovers for a long time have supported alternative currencies. Mm-hmm. Before cryptocurrency or Bitcoin came out in 2009, the Liberty community had already been using silver and to a lesser extent gold to transact business and buy products and services or whatever. So that's always been a thing. Back in the day, I was involved with the Liberty dollar, which was a silver currency that was in 1 ounce of silver, but they also had like warehouse receipts that you could trade that were backed by silver that was kept in a vault. Unfortunately, the federal government raided the Liberty dollar and took all of their silver and gold back in 2007 and basically put them out of business, and then charged Bernard von Nothaus, the founder, with counterfeiting, ultimately convicting him of that at a jury of his so-called peers. He wasn't counterfeiting. He was making silver pieces that did have, like the Statue of Liberty on it. So like some people thought that it looked like the dollar, or, the government's money. And I mean, I can kind of understand where they're coming from, but not really. It had a phone number on it. It had like a website on it. It was obviously not, to anyone that actually looked at this thing, it was obviously not trying to pretend like it was from the U.S. government. But regardless, they went after him, and ultimately they finally a judge decided to return the silver to the people that held it. But I was like, I don't want to get on a list. So I didn't take mine back, because I had some of the warehouse receipts. But now we have these things, which are called goldbacks.
Ooh.
And you can kind of see how beautiful they are. So this is the Utah goldback. This is the one. It's 1/1000th of an ounce of gold, and the manufacturing process is fairly new. It's like within the last decade. So previous to this particular manufacturing process, you couldn't get gold in this this format where, it's passable. It's got like a layer of like an acrylic over the top here. And so it's fairly durable.
Sure.
And it's only 1/1000th of an ounce. You can't get, gold that's easily less than, a gram, right?
Right.
And that's like a teeny little
Right.
little piece where if you drop it, you're going to lose it. If I drop
it's still got a hefty value.
yeah, and especially if you like a tenth of an ounce. A tenth of an ounce is barely bigger than my thumbnail.
Right.
But that's like, $200 worth of gold.
Right.
This is right now, these retail for about $4 street value. And then if you see them on eBay, they might be $5 or $6.
Okay.
So here you can actually use gold. And I brought these to the Porcupine Freedom Festival last year in the year 2000. And I was able to, with people who I'd never talked to about this before, buy food from every single vendor at that camping festival.
No shit.
The whole time I was there, I was using the gold back to actually eat, and
That's really cool.
It was pretty awesome. So yeah, the answer is definitely yes. I love alternative currencies because it allows you to take your value that you've created for yourself by doing whatever it is you do. I know you do plumbing work.
Mm-hmm.
You can take the value that you've created for your customers that they've paid you with and put it into something that the government can't control. So the government can't control the value of cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And the government, to a lesser extent, can't control gold and silver. Now, there's banks that kind of do some janky things with selling gold on paper to you. Well, if your gold isn't actually in your hands, then it's not really your gold. Mm-hmm. So the problem with the gold price, I think, is it's lower than what it should be because of the sort of manipulation that can go on in the gold marketplace, where if a bank sells a bunch of gold on paper that it doesn't actually have, mm-hmm. and then people request the actual gold, like give me my gold. There have been people who've gone through this process where the people that sold them the gold are like, well, we'll get it to you when we can, because they don't actually have the gold. They have to go find it or get it from somewhere to fulfill the orders. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of like gold that's been sold that doesn't actually have gold to back it. And so that's why the price of gold is probably lower than what it should be.
Well, so I hate to be Johnny Raincloud on this, but I'm definitely going to be a little bit, because I have my own thoughts about currency.
Okay.
In general. What gives silver and gold its value?
It's useful in industrial purposes.
For switches and like computers and stuff
Sure.
like that, right?
Yep.
Okay, so what happens if we have a major power failure throughout the United States, right? Wiped out. We have a blackout, and it doesn't come back for whatever reason. Terrorist attack or EMPs or something like that, right? Because our power grid is our life source. What can you do with gold or silver at that point? Or crypto?
Well, yeah, you obviously need crypto or power to have crypto. So that would be, difficult. But with gold and silver, I mean, people are historically attracted to shiny things. So, I mean, even if you can't turn a power switch on and power a computer or whatever, gold has always been valuable, and silver as jewelry. Women, for instance, they love themselves some jewelry, and certainly plenty of men are into shiny things like that as well. So I think that I don't think you're going to see in a shit hits the fan situation like you described. I don't think you're going to see the value of gold and silver drop. If anything, it will probably go up because more people will realize that it's useful. And when you
What happened?
That couldn't do anything.
Oof. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hang on.
Oh, we had a wicked skip. I think you're good now.
Sorry about that. I think actually my wire came loose from the laptop. So
okay, cool.
Apologies. But yeah, having gold being useful is what Goldback has done, and it's a relatively new thing out there. We're actually going to see the New Hampshire Goldback come out in 2021. Now, it's supposed to be in production right now. There's Utah Goldback, Nevada Goldback, and now there's going to be a New Hampshire Goldback. So it's the third one to come out. And these things have been incredibly popular, not just in the Liberty community here in New Hampshire, but elsewhere in the United States, and probably you're going to see them spread out to the world. I think they're really exciting. But so gold and silver, I think, are always going to be valuable. And even cryptocurrency, once you can get the power back on, and somebody will get the power back on, because that's just the interest of people. That's what people want. That's what the market wants. So it's going to happen. Maybe we'll see more decentralized power options at that point. If we do have some sort of crazy failure like you're talking about, it usually is, necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. So, a lot of people don't know that they need a thing until the thing's gone, right? Like, oh, now you don't have power. Well, now all of a sudden you're interested in a generator, or now you're, things like that, right? So, or maybe like a nuclear power plant that just powers a neighborhood, things like that. There are technologies like that that are being developed and or already exist. It's just that the government regulations prevent them from being put into place, because the government says we all have to have power provided by a central authority, which means that when, a branch goes down during a snowstorm, we have to wait on this one company to, do the thing that they do to make things go back on, which, because they don't have any real competition, with the exception of, solar power and some of these other things that are out there. But as far as like direct Fed power competition, they don't have it. And so, they do their best, but sometimes people die.
That's true.
So, what would it be like if we had multiple power centers that were around, not being run by the same company, and being run by neighborhoods or co-ops or other companies or charities or whatever? We wouldn't have crazy outages in the same way that we currently do today,
or crazy high prices.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. New Hampshire prices are ridiculous for power.
Yep. So
Bitcoin would come back, because Bitcoin is it's a blockchain. That's what's important about Bitcoin. It's this immutable public ledger that exists in thousands of locations all around the planet at the same time. So as long as one or two of those places still exist, out of the 10,000 plus that are out there, the Bitcoin blockchain is still there. As soon as you can flip your power back on, your money's still there. So that's still good. It's still useful.
So, all right, I feel like we need to do another segment on crypto in itself.
Sure.
Because I don't know a lot about it, and I've had some friends, explain some basics to me, but I know a lot of people who just don't get it. And like, I get hung up on fiat currencies. That's why, I don't, dollars, cash is better than nothing right now. But again, if the shit hit the fan, you can't eat. The way I look at it is, if you can't eat it and you can't trade it for something of actual value and you can't kill with it, it's useless. So like paper money, I don't care if you have a safe full of $100 bills. If the shit hits the fan, you're not trading that for food. Nobody's gonna give you, you know what I mean? And like I always say, you only have what you can make and what you can take. So if you can't, if you don't have a skill like fixing furnaces or building guns or doing roofs or something like that, then you better have the means to take things from others that have what you don't. You know what I mean? And it's a little post-apocalyptic on my behalf, but I think like that. Like if the shit really hit the fan,
things like ammunition, cigarettes, alcohol, toilet paper, those things will become...
Those will be the real value. Not even toilet paper. I don't get the toilet paper.
That's what people wanted when they thought the shit was hitting the fan last year.
Like, what's with the toilet paper, bro? I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, I've got a bidet, which is pretty nice. I highly recommend those.
Yeah.
They pays for themselves.
I could not agree more.
But yeah.
Well, hey, listen, I'm gonna let you go. We've been at it for a little while here.
Yeah, it's been a great discussion. I appreciate that. Anytime you want to talk about crypto, I've had a long time of experience with that, so I'm pretty good at explaining things.
I would love that.
Bitcoin Embassy here in New Hampshire.
So I will. I'm gonna reach out to you soon, and we'll do a crypto thing. But maybe one more time, just let my listeners know where they can find you. And
I'm almost every night on freetalklive.com. It's my talk show. It's based here in New Hampshire. It's on multiple stations in New Hampshire and across the United States. You can go there. Also, I blog at a website called freekeen.com. and there's usually like interesting videos. I put the video up of your arrest a few weeks ago there that's sort of like an overview video. It took different videos because there was a lot of cameras there.
Yes.
So I had Vincent, who's a great editor, put together, like, using footage from all the different cameras.
Ooh.
He put together sort of an overview piece that you can check out there. You don't have to scroll down a little ways or search for, I think, your name. Okay. Anyway, it'll come right up. So those are two good websites for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is Skylar with Savage Truth 603. You can find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. I'm on Parler and MeWe and all the stuff now pretty much under Savage Truth 603. So hit the like button, share, subscribe, and check out Ian's stuff. Ian, thank you so much for being with me. This has been an awesome chat, and I can't wait to do it again, bro.
Anytime.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
All right, bro. Later.